welcome back, followers. Not a ton of you out there, but enough to keep us happy. So, welcome back.
It's fun for us.
Special show today. So, we have our very first college football playoff rankings that came out last night.
That don't mean anything.
So-
Don't worry. That don't mean anything.
Don't get too upset about the playoff rankings yet, because there's still a lot of shit to happen. A lot of teams in the top 10 that still have to play each other. You could have somebody bouncing in outside the top 10, inside the playoff, just like Ohio State did last year.
Ohio State started at number 16 when the first playoff rankings came out last year.
I don't think anybody outside the top 12 personally is going to get in, but that's just my personal thought looking at the games moving forward. So
there would have to be some pretty crazy things there.
Ohio State went on a tear last year, and I think they deserved it. But let's talk about our top four, and then we'll look outside the next 6 teams in the top 10, and we'll even look at 11, and then we'll talk about the remaining schedules, and then we'll look at what does it look like. Who do we think is going to be in there? Once again, this is our opinions. We're just here to have fun. We're here to talk. We have some biases, of course, but
we have teams that we hate.
We're going to put our thoughts out there, and hopefully it's not too biased. There is one team we're very biased against, but not in a good way.
There are some teams that I hate that I'm actually pulling for to take the spot of some teams that I hate more.
Yes.
So
all right, so we got Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, and Alabama in the top 4. Those are the first 4 in, which obviously at this point doesn't mean anything because there's so many games to move forward. We still have, 5 games left in the season? 4 games left in the season. There's still a lot that can happen. Some teams have 5 games. So
yeah, depending on your conference championship.
4 to 5 games left. Anything can happen.
Last year, the number 1 seed on the first playoff rankings was Mississippi State. They had Mississippi State, Alabama, and Ole Miss. I think all 3 of them. Correct me if I'm wrong.
TCU or something.
One way or the other. There were 3. No, Florida State I think was the other one.
Okay.
It was some combination of 3 SEC teams and Florida State.
So those are top 4. Now looking at 5 through 11, we got Notre Dame, we got Baylor, Michigan State, TCU, Iowa, Florida, and Stanford just outside that top 10 at number 11. So, Clemson's schedule moving forward. They got Florida State this weekend.
Big game.
They're at Syracuse. They play Wake Forest, and then they're at South Carolina. The only game in my mind that they have a chance at losing is going to be Florida State. They get past Florida State, they're in.
You know, the only thing is that at South Carolina to end the season is a big rivalry game because it's an in-state game. South Carolina's not very good this year. But as we've seen with some teams this year, that teams that aren't good, the rivalry games are tough. Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah.
I mean...
But they also don't have their head coach anymore. They got a new interim coach.
Agreed. I do think that they'll take care of them. But just something to make things kind of interesting down the road.
And I think with Florida State this weekend, Clemson's out for revenge after screwing it up last year in the overtime against Florida State. I believe it was overtime. It was towards the end of the regulation.
And I don't know if Florida State's playing Golson or if they're playing McGuire.
Like I said the other day, if McGuire's playing,
it's going to be tough.
I think he's got a better arm than Golson. He can definitely throw farther. Mm-hmm. Maybe not stronger, but I think he's more accurate with the deep throw. But Clemson's a different team than whoever Florida State just beat. So
true. And Golson's got his legs. Yeah. So I don't know I don't know if he's still out or not.
So to me, Clemson, they win this weekend, they're in.
I think that they'll have a decently tough opponent in the ACC championship potentially. With how well. I mean, I know Duke had that tragedy loss the other day, but with how Duke's playing, with how North Carolina's playing, and Pitt, there's some decent teams in there. Yep. So,
all right, let's look at number 2, LSU. Big game this weekend, probably the biggest game of the season for both teams. Alabama, LSU. LSU goes to Alabama this year. They play on Saturday, then they have Arkansas. They're at Ole Miss, and then they got Texas A&M. Now, in my mind, they beat Alabama, they're in. I don't think Ole Miss is going to beat them because I don't think Ole Miss is that good. And I don't think Texas A&M is going to beat them because Texas A&M I don't think is that good, even though they both cracked the top 20 in the playoff rankings.
Agreed. However, something that we did not have down on here is they will play in the SEC championship, and most likely opponent for that game is going to be Florida. And they had a tough game with Florida, and it's tough to beat a team twice in the same year.
Yep.
It really is. So that'll be kind of fun to see. The thing I hate about this LSU-Alabama this weekend is if Alabama wins, it's going to look so good because they beat the number 2 team, right? And I mean that's not going to drop LSU very far. But on the flip side, if LSU wins, you would think Alabama's eliminated from playoff contention, right?
It's Alabama, you never know.
But what I've heard, seen, read, whatever, these last 24 hours is that if Alabama loses that game, well, they lost to the number 2 team in the country. They might not even drop out. And if they do, it's not going to be very far.
And we'll see after this week. I mean, we don't look into it too much right now.
I really hope LSU just blows them out and we don't even have to worry about it.
I hope Fournette runs all over them.
We'll see.
Number 3, Ohio State. The top 3 teams are undefeated. So to me, there's no doubt they should be there. Ohio State was the only one I'm like, maybe could drop out only because they've had some really questionable games where they didn't really play their best. And
they're pulling a Florida State from last year.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen with Ohio State. I still think they have a chance to lose 1 or 2 games.
They played Michigan State and Michigan their last 2 games. At Michigan the last game.
They played Minnesota this weekend, and Minnesota's not a joke of a team. So Minnesota's got nothing to lose right now. They want to get into a bowl game. They're 4-4. They need 2 more wins on the season.
And they want to play well for their coach that just retired or whatever. So
they got Minnesota, then they're at Illinois, Michigan State, then at Michigan. Those last 2 games of the season, and potentially Minnesota, they have potential to lose possibly 3 games. At least 2, maybe 3. At least have them close. Those close games, they're potentially...
They're fortunate that they have Michigan State at home because most likely Ohio State and Michigan State will both be undefeated when they meet in that game. Yeah. So
unless Nebraska somehow pulls shit out of their ass and
we probably will, but
okay. So that's Ohio State. Alabama, they got once again LSU this weekend. They're at Mississippi State, Charleston Southern because that's what SEC does, and then they're at Auburn. So Auburn sucks. Charleston Southern, they're gonna whoop them. Mississippi State is terrible if you ask me.
They're ranked in the top 25.
Which once again, but Bama. I will never understand how these rankings work. AP, anything like that. Ole Miss is 7-2. Ole Miss lost to Memphis. Yes, Memphis is very good, but they lost to Memphis at Memphis. Also, a tough environment. But I just don't see Ole Miss as good of a team as what everyone's making them out to be. They had a rough game against Vandy at home. I don't see Ole Miss as a good win for Alabama or a good loss for Alabama. It's not like Ole Miss is in the top 15 pushing hard for a playoff spot, which is why I was surprised that Alabama jumped up as far as they did because I don't see Alabama as a playoff team, but it's SEC.
Not right now, I don't see them. There's a couple interesting things. One with how Ohio State lost to Virginia Tech last year.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good loss by any means.
First game of the season. But they had time to work their way back up the ladder, kind of like Alabama did because they lost early in the season. Just things I've heard, I don't like any of them. I mean, I don't see how you can have them up there so high right off the bat. I mean, well, and let's take a look at the teams that are behind them because I think that's a big story. A bigger story is the teams that are behind them, not so much the fact that they're number 4, but the many teams that could be ahead of them, if you ask me. So,
okay.
Notre Dame. We love trash talking Notre Dame more because it's fun than anything else. But
because we like
Notre Dame,
piss people off.
Yeah, their schedule's not that tough. But who is their one loss to? The number 1 team in the playoff poll. So
I did see a stat that it said they had the 14th toughest strength schedule.
This year is the toughest schedule I think they've had.
One other thing that I was going to say, because you look at Alabama number 4 and Florida number 10. Okay, Florida has 1 loss. You know what that loss was? Number 2 LSU by 7 points.
Yeah.
Alabama lost to Ole Miss, who the next week Florida beat by like 20 points.
Yeah.
28 points or whatever.
Yeah.
So people at Florida right now are like, how are we sitting at 10 and Alabama's sitting at 4?
Yeah.
And I saw some things that the committee they kept saying things along the lines of how good your record is against over 500 teams.
Well, which doesn't seem to be consistent with last year. Is that what they were going off last year?
I don't know what they were going off of last year. It seemed to me that they were going off of common opponents. Which they still, I'm sure, are doing. But, I mean, in that case, Alabama got rolled up, or got beat by Ole Miss, and who gets rolled up by Florida the next week. And then, also, one other thing, with them Alabama has 3 wins over 500 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida only has 2. That's why they're ahead of them. Okay, so they're ahead of them by 6 spots because of that. And not only that, okay, if you want to go that route, Iowa has 4 wins against teams over 500.
Yeah.
So why aren't they?
And they're undefeated.
And they're undefeated, and Alabama's not.
So to me, if you're gonna, I don't mind the playoff poll. I think it's a good idea.
It is, because then we get to talk about this stuff.
Maybe it'll go to 8 teams eventually. Especially this last year was a good test, but TCU and Baylor argue it to the death that they need to move to 8. I got a little insight on that too, but when you got a team like Alabama jumping up like that, and their reasoning is because you go off what's their rate, how many teams they beat above 500. But if they're not going to be consistent each year, they should have a set of consistent guidelines on how they rank these teams every year, not just say, "Oh, this year we're going to do it this way. This year we're going to do it this way."
Well, things are really chaotic this year in that way. I know we did like that last year, but things are really inconsistent that way. So we're going to go over here.
And to me, if you have a set of guidelines, I think everyone deserves to know what those guidelines are, because you're going to exclude teams that are going to be like, what the hell? It doesn't make sense. By this logic, it doesn't make sense. But by that logic, the year before, it did make sense. But what are you doing?
A team like TCU, who's number 3, and they win by 56 points the last week of the season, and they drop 3 spots?
Yeah. I mean, So,
unbelievable.
It's crazy. It's a lot of crazy things, but Notre Dame's number 5. Notre Dame has Pitt at home and Wake Forest at home. Pitt's no joke. Pitt's going to be a tough game for them. Even though they're playing at home, Pitt's going to be a good game.
I think they're playing at Pitt.
Nope, it's at home. They got 2 home games and they got 2 road games.
I'm almost positive they're playing.
Just look at the schedule. Go ahead. Look, I'm going to talk. So they're playing Pitt.
Okay.
Then they got Wake Forest. And then they got Boston College and Stanford on the road. If I got that wrong, I'm sorry. I yelled at you. Boston College is going to be no joke. At Boston College. Boston College is not good this year, by the way. But they're going to Boston College. It's a big game. At Stanford.
That's going to be the biggest game, hands down.
That is going to
Stanford.
That's going to decide Notre Dame's fate.
As long as both Notre Dame and Stanford keep winning, that's going to be a deciding.
Because personally, I think they're going to be Pitt, Wake Forest, and Boston.
Fortunately for them, I mean, you can say fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how it plays out. That Stanford game, if them and Stanford both win out, that is essentially like Notre Dame's conference championship game, if you will, play-in type of game. But let's say they win that and they still don't have a conference championship game to play in, and somebody jumps them because they have a conference championship game to play in. I don't know. I don't think
it would hurt Notre Dame, because Notre Dame for the last 5 years has been projected to go to the championship game.
At Pitt.
Damn it, it's at Pitt. Either way, so these games are big. The last 4 games for Notre Dame are huge. They're going to have to make a statement. They've made statements all year. They played well against Clemson, who's number 1 now in the rankings. So we'll see what happens.
Which I believe why they're number 5 is because they have a 2-point loss. That's their only loss on the road in a monsoon against the number 1 team.
And honestly, I'd have them above Alabama right now. So
I'd have a lot of teams.
So number 6, Baylor. They're at Kansas State. They play Oklahoma at home. At undefeated Oklahoma State, undefeated right now. Then they're at TCU. Then they play Texas. So Baylor, that TCU game, and potentially, they don't have a tough. They have a tough schedule.
They do. I know they haven't
on the road.
No, they haven't to this point. We're gonna find out what they're made of.
Their next 4 games are huge.
K-State tomorrow night.
Yeah,
Thursday night.
Tomorrow night. So Texas should be They should kill Texas.
They play Texas on Thanksgiving.
But their next 4 games are huge. With K-State, Oklahoma State, and TCU. Those 4 games could decide their season. K-State's no joke. K-State's a decent team this year. Oklahoma is obviously not a joke. They're a good team this year. Oklahoma State's undefeated right now.
Yeah, they played 3 teams in a row that, at this point in time, are in the top 15.
Yep.
So
and if those defenses step up, if the defenses can step up for those 4 teams against Baylor, let's not talk about TCU, but K-State, Oklahoma State, defense. If you can play defense and stop the pass game, and they have a good run game too. If you can stop the pass game though, the long plays, you have a chance to win that game against Baylor.
What's hurting the Big 12 right now, what I've read, is that defense. They've all been giving up a lot of points.
Yeah.
You know, TCU gave up 52 points to Texas Tech. Oklahoma State gave up 53 points to Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Not taking anything away from Texas Tech, but they've had to play some tough games against some of these teams.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had to play TCU, Oklahoma State, and Baylor, who are all undefeated. So yeah, they've lost at least 3 games. I don't know what their record is, but that Big 12 every week, it seems like, is just a shootout. And with how many points are being scored on these teams, and the lack of non-conference strength of schedule there,
and no championship game, kills them. It killed them last year.
And I know they talked about having a conference championship game. What hurt them worse than not having a conference championship game was the Big 12 commissioner coming out and saying, we're going to have one true champion. Well, then what happened was Baylor beat TCU. TCU was ranked higher, and they didn't want to miss out on the playoff, so they did a co-champions.
Yeah.
And that was what, okay, well, you have co-champions. Well, one of your co-champions, both of them had losses.
Yeah.
And so
it's tough. Big 12's got some things to work out. It obviously is not happening this year, but you might have a clear champion in the Big 12 this year, depending on what happens.
I believe that there will be.
So, all right. So, number 7, Michigan State, undefeated. Number 8, TCU, undefeated. Number 9, Iowa, undefeated. Number 10, Florida, 1 loss. Stanford, 1 loss. So they wrap up the last 5 spots in the top 11. Okay. I'm going to give you a rundown of what I think is going to happen here over the next few weeks.
Okay.
Out of the top 11, who do I think is going to be my top 4 by the end? And I got to make note of this because I want to see what happens after this next week. So I think Clemson and LSU are still in. I don't see them dropping. I don't see Clemson losing to Florida State. I see them winning their last 3 games. But that ACC championship game is still going to be huge. But Dabo Swinney, he wants that championship. He has been dying.
He's crazy, man.
Begging.
He's awesome.
He is insane on the sideline. He loves his players. Dabo Swinney is a good coach. I want it for him. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
I think they're going to win out. I think they're going to go to the playoff game. LSU, I think they're going to beat Alabama. Fournette is a force to reckon with, but the quarterback is not that bad either. So they have one of the best rush defenses in the country in Alabama.
Right.
They're playing at Alabama. LSU they're out to get them. They're coming to Tuscaloosa. I think they're going to win, and I think they're going to win out. I don't think LSU, once again, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, boom, I think they're going to beat them. Ohio State, like I said, I think they're out. I don't think they're going to make it in.
Okay.
Don't think they have a chance. Because I think either Michigan State or Michigan, possibly both, and maybe even Minnesota, will beat them. Because Ohio State has shown struggles.
Potentially in Iowa in the conference championship game.
I'll get there.
Okay.
Also, Minnesota. Like I said, Minnesota could beat them. You got Cordell Jones starting, and he throws a lot of picks. See what happens. But when it comes to Big Ten championship, I think they're going to see Iowa.
You picked
and
them.
I said I was going to win.
Picked them the other day.
So I think Iowa has a good shot of getting in. I'm not saying they're in, but I'm saying they have a really good shot. Bama's going to lose to LSU. That should knock them out of the playoff. 2-loss teams should not be in the playoff.
There'd have to be a lot of craziness for a 2-loss team to be in the playoff, in my opinion.
Notre Dame has a really good shot.
I think they do too.
I think they have a clear shot at number 3 or number 4 in the playoff spot, but they have to beat Stanford.
At Stanford.
They have to beat Stanford. If they can't beat Stanford at Stanford, they're out. But if they beat Stanford, to me, they're in.
Okay.
So I'm going to put them down only because if they beat Stanford, but I'm going to put an or in there.
I was going to say,
I
have the same 2 picks as Clemson and LSU. I believe they will too. And I think the winner of the Notre Dame-Stanford game.
Okay. Baylor, TCU, I think they're both out. Once again, Big 12, I don't think either of them is going to get in because I think Michigan State's going to have to play, or Michigan State or Ohio State is going to play Iowa.
Okay.
But the winner of that team could be in. Michigan State or Iowa. Stanford could be in. I don't think the last 5, Michigan State, TCU, Iowa, Florida, Stanford, I think Michigan State, Iowa, and Stanford are the other 3 that have a chance of getting in. So right now I'm putting Notre Dame or Stanford. I think the winner of that game gets in.
Okay.
because I think Stanford's going to win the Pac-12. And then the winner of the Big Ten championship, I think it's going to be Michigan State or Iowa. I don't think Ohio State's going to be there. So I'm saying LSU or Iowa. And I think that's going to wrap out your top 4. So you got Clemson, LSU, Notre Dame, or Stanford, depending on who wins that last game of the season before the Pac-12 championship. And Michigan State or Iowa. Once again, I don't think Ohio State's going to be in that Big Ten championship. So those are going to be my top 4/6 that have the best opportunity to get into the playoff.
Man, it's tough.
You can write it down if you want.
I'm pretty similar to you.
I'm gonna write it down.
I when you said this Michigan State Iowa thing, I kind of liked it. Like that would be what I would kind of hope to have happen, but I'm still, I don't know.
Who are your top 2? Who do you think's for sure getting in?
Clemson and LSU.
Okay.
And then, like you said, the winner of the Notre Dame Stanford game.
Okay.
And then I would love to, but I'm not picking the same thing as you. I'm not doing that. So I'm gonna go with the winner of the Baylor TCU game.
Okay. And that's a very good possibility. I mean, that Big 12 shakeup, Baylor. I didn't look at TCU's schedule, but it's probably not too far off from what Baylor has. I don't know who TCU's played.
They play Oklahoma State this weekend in the top.
That's right.
Undefeated. Both teams are undefeated. They still have to play Oklahoma. They still have to play Texas. They still have to play Baylor.
I mean, it's crazy. The Big 12 is nuts.
One thing that I was listening to the radio today, and they were talking about how they were talking to, I don't know, Big 12 coaches, Big 12 commissioner or something like that, said, we're not worried right now. I know when the first rankings come out, we're not in the top 5, but we have 4 teams in the top 15 that pretty much all have to play each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so if one team can win all those games, I know that they're not going to be in the top 15, every single game that each one of them play each other in. As, TCU and Oklahoma State play this weekend, one of them's not going to be as highly ranked as they are now, but and the question was, with having so many tough games at the end of the season, is that like in your favor or is it worse? And I mean, it could go either way because
I think it's in your favor.
I think it's in your favor. You got to win.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like having a good non-conference schedule, like a tough non-conference schedule. It's in your favor because if you win, then you look that much better, and if you lose, you don't look as bad. It just depends on how teams end up doing the rest of the season, but.
This is going to be crazy, man. I'm excited for this year. I think there's just so many different scenarios you can throw in here. You just don't know what's going to happen.
I should have.
Because honestly, Baylor TCU is a huge game, but seeing Baylor's 3 games before TCU is huge.
Yeah.
And TCU has a similar schedule moving forward.
Yeah. I shouldn't have picked the Baylor TCU. I should have picked the Memphis Houston winner.
Ooh. But no joke, Memphis is still undefeated.
And they're 13th.
Houston is still undefeated.
I know, and they both have to play Temple as well, or at least Memphis.
Temple was undefeated.
Memphis still has to play Temple, who's probably still going to be in the top 25.
And Toledo's no longer undefeated. They
lost last night. Sorry for them. They're way out.
Sleeper would be Memphis for you.
For sure, and like that scenario I said. Probably never going to happen. There's literally like 25 different things that need to happen. It was something like Florida State beats Clemson, Florida State wins but loses to Florida, so they still win the ACC, their division in the ACC. Mm-hmm. Then they win the ACC championship. That would mean Florida State would be the ACC champ with 2 losses. ACC would probably be out. LSU, if they were to or not LSU. It was, let's see, if Ole Miss ended up winning the SEC as a 2-loss team, but losing to Memphis undefeated, that could potentially
put Memphis in.
Put the SEC out. And if Notre Dame were to beat Stanford, and Stanford were to go on and win the Pac-12 as a 2-loss team, there could potentially be like 3 Power 5. And at that point, there would probably be like 1-loss Clemson that would slide in there, or something like that.
There would just be a lot of bar fights going on.
There's so many different crazy things that can happen. This is just week 1. We can't get ahead of ourselves. There's a lot of things left.
Because we're gonna be back every Wednesday, telling you what our thoughts are.
But it's gonna be fun. And
so Jimmy's got Memphis as his sleeper.
That'd be sweet.
I'm gonna take Utah as my sleeper, which I'm sorry because I was kind of like, they don't have a chance. But once again, they go to the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah, you did say that, and I was the one that reminded you that they.
But if they go to the Pac-12 and they win the Pac-12 championship as a one-loss team, Utah has a chance to get into the playoff, depending on everything that happens ahead of them. Because they're 12 right now.
They are at 12
in the rankings. So. They still have a shot, as is anybody in the top 15, if you ask me.
Maybe it's too early to throw this out there, but do we need to go to an 18 playoff?
We might have more discussion after this year.
Honestly, if you threw, I know Iowa's at 9 right now, but let's say they go to the Big Ten championship undefeated and they're just outside of the top 5. Maybe they win, maybe they don't. Maybe they're like in that 6, 7, 8 range. You lighten them up with like Clemson or something.
Yeah.
That could be a pretty good game. The 1 versus 8 is not going to be a bad game. I don't know. I think, my personal opinion, they should have 8 teams where you win your conference championship and you're in. Maybe, I don't know. Because you could have like a 3-loss team win a conference championship. I don't know how you'd want to do that.
This is why we're here, and we're not voting. This is why we just get our opinions, because what we think, like I said, our bias is we hate Alabama. We both hate Alabama. It's no joke.
They shouldn't be at number 4.
You should know that by now. If you were to put 8 teams in the playoff right now, I would put all the undefeateds in Notre Dame in those top 8. Forget Alabama should not be there.
I'd put Florida in there before them. I'd put Stanford in before them. I'd put Utah in before them. I'd put Memphis in before them.
And they always say that there's no bias towards the SEC. Even Kurt Herbstreit came out saying, "No, that's just ridiculous." And what's his name?
Oh, right.
I can't remember his damn name, but he's not on there anymore.
Musburger?
No. Damn, he's not on. He's not
Chris
on the
Fowler?
show. Yeah, Chris Fowler came out and he was pissed. He's like, "Oh, these people think the SEC, yada yada." Like, well, yeah. What do you see every year? You got Alabama with 1 loss, and they're number 4 above a bunch of teams that are undefeated.
You come out with these teams like,
how are we not supposed to be biased?
Like Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, that they started out really good, and they've kind of both, all of them have taken some stumbles, and they're still in the top 20.
And you got teams that are consistent across the board, winning every week. Ole Miss A&M, Texas A&M is still in the top 25.
They got blown out.
They're 6-2. They shouldn't be in the top 25. They're not.
Well, and I know
it's SEC though, and guess who the SEC is owned by, and runs their network?
Mm-hmm.
ESPN. Mm-hmm. So, conspiracy, maybe. So, just our opinions once again. But we hate Alabama. We hate the SEC. But
yeah.
Go LSU though. Personally.
Fun games this weekend. It's gonna be a blast.
Anything else?
We'll have more to discuss on Sunday night, and then especially on Wednesday.
We might even come back to you on Tuesday.
With the way that they'll come out with new AP rankings. I don't know that we really want to talk about that come Sunday.
We'll talk about the games.
Our shows might be a little shorter. We're gonna start condensing it down to the meat of right here.
The meat.
So.
Alright guys, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, share with your friends, family. Hope you enjoyed it today. Go Huskers, go Big Red. Beat Michigan State this weekend, but if you don't, that's okay because I hope they beat Ohio State. So
either way.
Let us know what you think. We'll be back soon.
See you next time.